I fucking hate this shit. I fucking hate it. I am, of course, talking about the "they took our jobs" guy in one of the more recent episodes of Rings of Power. I was going to talk about it in my last video, but I just decided to do its own video because I think it warrants its own little slice of commentary. And I fucking hate messages like this. The Rings of Power fans don't want real-world politics anywhere near Middle-earth. And you see with all these other shows as well, all these fluff pieces that come out saying, oh yeah, people don't want politics in their shows. And it's wrong. What a lot of these showrunners and the people who commission these kinds of fluff pieces fail to realise is people don't want their politics in their shows. It is almost like Hollywood and the elites up there just cannot even entertain the idea that they do not have their finger to the pulse of society in the way that they think that they do. It just never occurs to them. It never occurs to them. And it pisses me off to no end. Oh, you might say, oh, well, if that's what you think, oh, well, why do shows with strong political messages never do very well? Oh, well, I tell you what, let's take a fucking look at the most popular show on Netflix ever. Squid Game. Oh, an all-Korean cast, a very diverse cast, and also a show that's absolutely fucking dripping in political commentary. This is actually a bit of an older article from Variety, but Squid Game still stands as the number one show on the number one streaming platform in the world. Back when this article was written in 2021, it had 1.65 billion views. I've read that it's now over 2 billion views, and it sits comfortably in the number one spot. A show that isn't even in English, that most people watch in subtitles, that has political commentary slapping you around the face in every episode, somehow took over the internet when it came out and still stands as the king of shows on Netflix, which is no small feat by any stretch of the imagination. How a show with all of this political commentary doing so well? I could just imagine like showrunners of Rings of Power being like, I wonder how. Oh, I wonder why our political messaging doesn't resonate in the same way. Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's because this show focuses on the things and the political messages and has a political sentiment that people can't care about, that people can identify with. Unlike the Rings of Power. Oh, fucking riddle me this. And it's funny because guess what else was a blockbuster hit in the not too distant past? Parasite, a movie, an all-Korean cast in Korean, and most people watched in subtitles. A film dripping in political commentary, and it did incredibly well. Oh dear, but I can imagine the Hollywood elites watching it and watching Squid Games thinking, this show is about abuse of power and having an extreme wealth and it holds a mirror up to the real dark sides of capitalism. Oh, well, I don't want my Mexican maid who cleans my shitty toilet 2 times a week to get any funny ideas. Oh no, we'll just stick to having people think the elves don't like the elves don't like the men. Wow, we'll stick to that. That's a little bit safer. Okay. Now that little rant is over and we've accepted that we do like politics, I'm sure you can think of many, many more examples of really successful political messages in shows that have resonated with the crowds. I mean, Game of Thrones alone is absolutely dripping with them. House of Dragon, which I'm really enjoying at the minute, and apparently so is everyone else, even though I wasn't expecting to, is also rife with political messaging. But it's just done successfully, and it's done in a way that feels like someone has some idea of what everyone else is thinking. And I'm sorry to the showrunners of Rings of Power, but it doesn't seem like you've got that same level of awareness at the moment in time. My mind could be changed in future episodes, though. So we are, of course, talking about the "they took our jobs" guy in the 4th episode of the Rings of Power. I didn't talk about it in my last video because I just felt like he deserved its own video. But in my last video, I sort of pointed out that the Númenóreans didn't really have any reason to dislike the elves. I mean, the Southlanders, you can say, oh, fair enough, there might be some anti-elf sentiment left over from the days of the nasty Sauron. But with the Númenóreans, I mean, in the book they love the elves a little bit too much in the book, but in the show they've got no real reason to dislike them, and the showrunners seem to have said these Númenóreans don't really have a reason to dislike these elves, so we better give them one, and they started with they took our jobs guy, the guy who gives that little speech, elf workers don't tire and all this sort of stuff, and they're coming for your trades. That kicked it off. That kicked off what was supposed to be taken as the reason that the Númenóreans don't like the elves. And then this guy, Pharazôn, he then steps in with that's not really what we should be worried about. We should be worried about them being in government. Okay. So we got these two political messages coming along. I mean, let's just read what this guy has to say about it. There aren't many parallels to reality in a fantasy series. I mean, yeah, there are. Yes, there are. Just... While plenty of distinctly fictional series take aim at real-world issues and attempt to mirror them through law-friendly additions, most fantasy is tackling social and political issues of a very different sort to what viewers are used to. It's not stopping critical viewers from hurling accusations at Amazon's The Rings of Power, making claims of wokeness and political messaging tossed into its dialogue. They're not just making claims of wokeness. I think Squid Games was a woke show. There you go. I mean, we're all free apparently to use the word wokeness however we want. It's a very dynamic term that's changing. Squid Games was woke, people loved it. So it's not the case that when you just people are complaining about wokeness that's automatically a bad thing. And political messaging tossed into its dialogue. These claims are tenuous at best, as noted by one Redditor, and seem to be yet another attempt by the show's passionate detractors to paint it in a negative light. I actually found the Reddit post that they're talking about here before I found this article. I'll have a look at the Reddit post at the end and shed my thoughts on it, but I want to give attention to the actual Reddit post itself rather than just read it through this article. But let's say, okay, so the show's detractors, let's have a little look. I've built up a few of them here. One, we've got Tomislav H. Give it a 1.5 star on Rotten Tomatoes. I wrote my honest opinion on Amazon, but it was deleted because Amazon didn't agree with my opinion. I actually did the same thing. I wrote a fucking super vanilla review on Amazon. Like, it was light, and because I didn't give it enough stars, it got rejected for having inappropriate content. Apparently the inappropriate content was the lack of stars, maybe. Also, I wrote that if someone wants to watch a good movie or series where a women playing a leading role, they better watch Kill Bill or Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm actually blown away that this guy said this. I have been thinking about doing a Kill Bill, like a Beatrix Kiddo versus Galadriel sort of video, because I think Kill Bill is far, far better at setting up a female lead. In fact, the whole cast of Kill Bill is strong women. Every deadly enemy, they're all women. It's almost like a purely women cast. The men in this story are easily the weakest of all of them. I mean, in the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad. I mean, Bud, he doesn't even fight. But anyway, that's an aside. It's just making me feel like maybe I should do that video. Rings of Dogshit is boring, poorly written, and has more to do with political agenda. They took our jobs, for example, than Tolkien's work. That's what that person has to say. I'll give you my thoughts on it after we read this other review that I really wanted to go over. First off, the visuals are incredible, but that is the only good thing about the show. The pace is slow and boring, blah, blah, blah. If we just go down to the end, how can you expect the audience to be fully immersed in the fantasy world of Middle-earth when people use swords, bows, arrows, and spears, lit fires to keep warm, and travel by horse, and then at the same time have modern themes injected into it? I just watched episode 4, and I kid you not, there was the Númenórean equivalent of the "they took our jobs" guy in it. I think the South Park episode that first aired that was like back in 2012 or something like that. It was a long time ago. It was a decade ago, and then apparently the Rings of Power I've got it being parroted as well, just in the same way. It's ridiculous. I mean, everyone knows it's ridiculous. It's that perhaps they felt the need, as I said, to generate some reason for the hatred between the Númenóreans and the elves, because Tolkien wrote it going off in a different direction. But it's a bit bizarre. Even if you consider they took our job guys and Pharazôn and the guy who was worried about government and elves infiltrating the Númenórean government, They're talking like there's a fucking refugee camp of elves sat on the beach waiting to get in. There's one elf. Where are the other elves in Numenor? Like, because in the books, they're all in Valinor. They're all in the Immortal Lands where the Numenorians aren't allowed because they're actually banned by the gods. And they're not in fucking Numenor. There's no one there. Like, who's taking their job? Like, where? What? Galadriel? I mean, Galadriel is literally royalty in the stories. She's not going to come along and take this guy's job. It's just so funny. So on top of the fact that there are no elves there, it is also just a bit bizarre because elves are immortal half angels in Tolkien lore. And so, you know, particularly like Galadriel. Galadriel has been alive since before the stars were made. I mean, that's how old she is. Like, like it would just be so unusual to have these elves coming in that have been alive for thousands of years, since almost since the dawn of time. You know, they are so skilled. They've had thousands of years of being alive to acquire skills. They're always painted as being the best craftsmen. I mean, they're the best at everything. They've had a long time to perfect everything that they do. And just imagine this elf coming along with this Numenorian and being like, "Give us that fucking broom. I'm fucking sweeping the floor today, motherfucker." Like, what? Why would they take... I mean, the idea of the job in Lord of the Rings is a bit of a funky one anyway. I mean, Sam was Frodo's gardener. I mean, that's pretty much like as far as I can recall, that's the closest idea to like a job that we actually got in the original trilogy. But just imagine these Numenorians getting outpaced by like these highly skilled angelic people. I mean, the elves have... I can't remember if it's said directly in the Silmarillion, but the elves, especially the older ones, are so old that they've actually spoken to the gods. Like some of them may have spoken even to Eru Ilúvatar. I don't know if the Silmarillion said that, so don't quote me on that. But you know, the elves, I mean, they were around these deities. And this idea that this guy, this you know, I'm guessing he's a blacksmith or something, that gives this speech, is worried about some timeless half angel who knows almost everything coming over, like smithing them some stuff, like stealing his jobs. I just, it's very out of place. It's very out of place. And I guess, and I mean, I gave these two examples. There are more, and there are lots of YouTube video, and lots of people have spoken on what an unusual thing that is to have put in there, to put in the story of the Rings of Power. It's just, anyway. But I don't want to be a detractor, as this guy said. I don't want to be a passionate detractor just looking to paint it in a negative light. So we'll look at someone who posted on Reddit, Late Stage PhD. I actually really appreciate this guy's post, you know, because it's easy, isn't it, to jump on the bandwagon and bash something, but he's standing up for it, which I've got a lot of time for. The so-called took our job speech was not a political commentary, and the people who say it is are the ones bringing politics into this. Okay. So it's not political commentary. It's kind of like what this guy's trying to say. Before I even get into it and read it and pass on some of my thoughts, I just say, but it still fell flat. Even if you say that it's not trying to draw any political parallels between society today and Numenor, did it, based on what I've just said, does it even feel like that would be a good enough reason for the Numenors to be like, nah, we fucking hate the elves, they're taking our jobs? Even in the fantasy setting in which those words were said, and even in the fantasy setting in the words that Pharazôn said when he was like, yeah, we don't want them in our government either, I'll stop that. I mean, Galadriel's getting on a fucking boat. She's literally, everyone knows that she's leaving, so even in the context of the story, if you reject and you don't see any political commentary attempted to be made there, does it really set the foundations of distaste among the Numenorians? I don't know. Anyway, we'll go on. It's a very weak it is a very weak parallel. I won't read it all, but this person's basically saying most political commentary about workers taking jobs is about low-skilled workers, and he basically says what I just said. The elves, I mean, the elves are like the all-time like most skilled people in Middle-earth. Like they are craftsmen that have had thousands and thousands of years to do what it is there that they've done. And and this idea that they would take people's jobs is a bit ridiculous. I do agree with him there. So he's saying that that's why it's not a political parallel. He's like, it's not political commentary because it doesn't match the way immigration and the taking of people's jobs happens in society today. Yeah, in Middle Earth, it would make even less sense. It would be like a literal angel out of the Bible coming along and saying, I'm going to set up a rival fish store next year. I think it makes even less sense because of that. But he's saying that, but yeah, to be fair to this Redditor, he's not saying that it makes sense. He's just saying that the writers aren't trying to be overtly political with it. Okay, well, I could give him that one because I sort of agree with what he's saying. Whether or not you then say, oh, maybe they're not being political, it's still a very poor attempt at setting up animosity between the elves and the men because it's just not believable. Next, it's not modern at all. Okay, it's just that people have been xenophobic for ages. Okay, yeah, I agree with that. I don't think the fact that it's not modern means that it's not an attempt at political commentary. I mean, just because there are really old political issues that have been around for a very long time does not mean that that we can't comment on them as they manifest in society today. So I agree that it's a very old issue. It should be understood in the broader context of the story. It basically goes on to say here that actually what the writers were trying to do is set up Pharazôn to come along and grip the situation and turn it to his advantage to get the crowd on his side. So this guy gets them riled up with a speech about elves taking their jobs, and then Pharazôn comes along and switches it into what he actually wants, which is for them to be riled up about government, elven influence in government. Okay, I mean, like I said, there's one elf, and of course it was the helping of the elves that actually got them the island of Numenor. Something easy to overlook in this situation, but fine. I accept this. In the broader context of the story, I guess Pharazôn's stepping in and redirecting of the crowd makes a little bit more sense. It makes a little bit more sense than the idea that elves are there stealing everyone's jobs. Fine. Does it hit home? Does it provide a believable basis for the level of animosity that we see between elves and men? No. I mean, I don't feel that way. Some of the reviewers on Rotten Tomatoes and Amazon seem to not feel that way. It's up to you as a viewer whether or not you think that forms a really convincing basis to launch the next stage of the story off of. I just don't see it. But as someone who is into the law, maybe I find it more jarring because I feel like talking to the opposite thing. He took. It was their jealousy of the elves and kind of like their love. The Numenorians just wanted to be like. Oh, spoiler alert, by the way. It was the Numenorians' like jealousy and love and desire to be like the elves that ended up being their undoing. So I guess maybe just from my eyes, it looks wrong. Let me know in the comments whether or not you agree. Should this person ever watch my video, I liked your post. I always appreciate it. If you felt like it was good, I do appreciate your attempt to sort of like go on the record. Also, sorry guys if my camera keeps going dark. I bow to the whims of the sun in the north of England these days. I don't have a light controlled room. So if the camera's gone a bit dark, then I'm sorry for that, but there's fuck all I can do about it, because I'll tell you what, I am in the land of the clouds up here, and there's it's just, whether or not there's sun in the room, who knows. Right, that's it. Thanks for watching, everyone.